Now, moving on to Rinoa. Now, Rinoa is, of course, the love interest in this game, and looked at in a certain way, we can see she's a very conventional female part in a Square game. She's very formulaic in that she's a driven young woman, like Yuna, like Garnet, like Terra. She's something of a staple character, but I do like how, in the instance of Final Fantasy VIII, this headstrong nature of hers is utilised as a means of coaxing Squall out of his cloistered emotional state. But aside from this, she's not just the foil for Squall, the way we get character development out of him, but her own character arc is also interesting because at the beginning of the game, she's pretty much naive about everything, about politics, war, and revolution, and she's really just a sort of rebellious daddy wasn't there sort of teenager who's trying to get back at her father, who's a general for the Galbadian military. We see that she's somewhat spoiled in the very first instant because her room is very flamboyant and painted pink, in the timber train, and presumably this is done to suit her tastes and signify her immaturity. And she's also referred to, of course, by Zone and Watts as the princess. So Squall understandably finds this, along with her unprofessional demeanour, somewhat frustrating. And this is good because, this is how Rinoa is. She is a very naive person. This hinges, however, this changes when she naively attempts to trap Edia's power with the Odin bangle in Deleng City. And after she's confronted with the true brutality of, these people that she's facing, she very quickly comes to terms with her own place in the world and how someone like Squall is so much more well-adjusted to this sort of thing than she is. One of the things I also like about her life, like Cypher, is she's subtly, drawn into the main thread, if you like, of the game, again to do with Laguna, because of course he was in love with her mother, Julia. And then, Laguna runs off, leaves Julia heartbroken, which allows General Caraway to sort of swoop in and get with her and, of course, produce Rinoa. So this adds a whole new dimension of fate to Squall meeting her, and it's embellished, not cheesily, I might add, by the shooting star, for example, that they see after the dance sequence. The best aspect of Rinoa's role in the game for me is when she falls into a coma and then becomes a sorceress. It seems at this point in the game that things might start picking up and getting better between her and Squall, and then we get this total curveball which really throws the story into a new and more tragic direction when they land the Ragnarok and Rinoa gets taken away, for example, and then Squall goes kind of crazy and rushes to save her. This is actually a really important part of the game because Squall is a pragmatist and as a soldier who follows orders to the letter. This is an emotional reaction that one just doesn't expect, him to have. He carried her to Esthar, right, which is one thing. That's not him going against anyone particularly. That's just him kind of being, selfish, if you like. But to actively combat authority, he's breaking the law when he goes and seizes her back from Esthar. It conveys a real kind of raw emotion. We have all this silly romantic stuff between those two earlier in the game where she's sort of trying to court him and get his attention. But this is very raw, emotive qualities that we're seeing here, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's very powerful. But apart from that, and, Rinoa's kind of role in this game, I've not much really else to say about her. I think that the romantic ending tied up nicely. I know that there's rumours pertaining to the idea that Squall's dead and this happy ending is nothing but a dreamscape or his imagination. But personally, I think that's nonsense. The time compression story plays out very cohesively and, narrative-wise. And if you actually watch the entire ending, you see Squall and Rinoa on the balcony together. It's a resolved ending. There's no doom and gloom. Squall's happy. And as to the idea that Squall died on Disc 1 where Adia fills him with icicles, I really actually like that theory. I think that's a brilliant theory, and if you haven't heard of it before, I'd go to squallsdead.com, I think it's called, and it's a really good, it's very, very well put forward, very intellectually put forward. But if true, this would render pretty much the entire game completely redundant. It would make everything to do with Laguna and all that sort of important narrative stuff entirely redundant also, and I don't think the Squall's dead theory really accommodates the Laguna dreamscapes that we have, because of course Squall's life is completely divorced from Laguna's life, and this doesn't quite fit the mold for me. And although it's very good and I find it a very entertaining theory, I just don't think it's really what Square had in mind. And although this game is ambitious and very complex in its themes, I don't think it was going quite that complex and existential. and abstract, really. There's also another popular theory with this game regarding Rinoa, and this also encroaches on the potential for a happy ever after sort of ending. And I'll get into that now by discussing the main antagonist of this game, which is Ultimecia. Now, Ultimecia is often a sticking point with fans of Final Fantasy because I find that because she isn't mentioned and doesn't really appear until about halfway through the game, at the end of Disc 2, and even after this she only really appears about 3 times in the game, there's a degree of ambiguity about her. We don't know much about her, which is probably where all these kind of theories are coming from. But I would refute this by saying that actually Ultimecia, firstly, she does appear in the game quite a lot because she's in the guise of other sorceresses. She's kind of controlling Edea, she's controlling Adele, and she is the architect of pretty much everything bad that happens in this game. So she does play a very decisive role in what's happening. And the second reason that she seems to be a sticking point for people is because her intentions aren't really clear unless you're kind of paying attention and really kind of reading into it. And I think, to an extent, you do need to have the knowledge from the Ultimania to sort of really kind of get this. By the way, the Ultimania for this game has been translated and it's available at livestream.net, so if you were interested in kind of digging around and getting to grips with some of the behind the scenes stuff and the concepting and the embellished mythology of this game, it's pretty well translated. I mean, on the surface, Ultimecia's plan seems quite straightforward for a sort of antagonist, which is becoming an immortal god sort of thing. But really boiling it down, I think it's actually much more complex than that, and it's a lot more complex than it sounds. And it's we could put this down in a lapse of storycraft or translation, but I actually think it's because she's intimidated by the idea of death and the finiteness of being. Ultimecia exhibits signs of what's known as death anxiety, and more specifically existential death anxiety, which is the technical term. So what this does is, if we are to go with this idea that she suffers from existential death anxiety, it ties all 3 key themes that I've identified earlier in this talk: the death, of course, the finiteness of time, and issues pertaining to the self, which is, of course, death anxiety is a result of yourself being incapable of reconciling with the world around you, and the machinations of the world, and the prospect that at some point in time you will no longer be yourself, as you are. You're going to die. And Ultimecia can't really get to grips with this idea that she will one day no longer be. But rather than seeking therapy or going crazy like us humans that might suffer from this disorder do in the real world, in the supernatural world of Final Fantasy VIII, where Ultimecia is a sorceress, she attempts to combat this inevitability with time compression. And this is a vehicle towards perpetual life. And it does kind of make perfect sense, the whole time compression thing. Because I mean, I've spoken to people about this before and they got a bit lost around this and they thought it was kind of a lapse in storytelling. But it does make sense. It's a very cohesive and good storyline. And Ultimecia using this as a vehicle to, maintain existence indefinitely, it makes perfect sense. And of course, we can't forget that Ultimecia is an inherently evil sorceress. So the fact that time compression creates a void wherein only she can exist, and basically kind of removes everyone else, it's a vacuum where she can just live. It's basically 2 birds with 1 stone for her. Much like my analysis of Squall, the etymology of Ultimecia's name also has a degree of symbolism to it and a degree of metaphor attached to it, in that it ties in with this concept of time. Because of course it is a play on the word ultimate, which is a term for the end of a process or an extreme result of a process. So we're still operating in this time convention, and of course the fact that she's the final boss at the end of the game is relevant in that ultimate is the end of a process, it's the end of the game. So it's got this time symbolism to it as well. Now, although Ultimecia, she is a relatively ambiguous antagonist compared to someone like Sephiroth, who has a massive amount of character development, but I kind of like this because it has developed this interest and many fan theories regarding her, the most popular of which is, of course, that Ultimecia is actually Rinoa in the future. Now, I really do like this theory because it offers a very tragic twist to the game, and with such a cohesive and positive ending, with Squall and Rinoa ending happily ever after, it does leave you thinking, what could have possibly happened, what terrible thing could have happened to have this as, the ultimate result. And I like that, and I think it's a very intelligently put forward, theory. Of course, there's a lot of aesthetic similarities between these two characters. However, my personal feelings on the matter is that this was probably not the intention of the developers, at least, maybe not quite. I think if this theory were to hold up, Ultimecia would, she does share aesthetic similarities with Rinoa, so she could possibly be, perhaps a distant relative, is the only way I can feasibly think of this theory as being, legitimized. Firstly, we have the facial similarities and the iconography of the angel wings, and it seems very telling to this end that they are intended to be similar or related somehow. But the ideas behind why I think they'd be related and not actually Rinoa is because the two things that we irrefutably know about Ultimecia is that one, she's a sorceress from the distant future, and two, she's feared and hated by the people in her time. Now, for my part, I think it's highly unlikely that Rinoa is someone who's... Well, firstly, okay, let's take Rinoa out of the picture because, it's distant in the future, okay? So if we consider Squall and Rinoa having a daughter together, I think it's highly unlikely that, those two and, their party of friends and the optimistic environment of Garden is going to be a place where that child's going to have a bad childhood, to the extent that they grow up and could become quite psychopathic. I just don't think that that's plausible at all, really. So at a stretch, perhaps a granddaughter or, a very distant sort of blood relative. And I know a lot of people have used Dissidia and, these latter instalments of the Final Fantasy VIII story to sort of promote this theory. And I don't buy into that at all. I think what Square have done, and they've done this with Final Fantasy VII, and it kind of bugs me actually that they do this, is once they get a whiff of what fans are thinking, they'll pay lip service to it. So for example, Final Fantasy VII was a massive success, so they've been dining out on Cloud and spin-offs for the past 10 years. I think this is similar with Final Fantasy VIII. They've purposely made the relation, the similarities between Rinoa and Ultimecia in these newer instalments. They've made them much more apparent and similar on purpose to sort of increase this interest and generate this sort of controversy around it, because at the end of the day, it sells shit for them. So yeah, I mean, you will notice that I haven't mentioned Kingdom Hearts or Dissidia or anything like that, because I consider these games as standalone titles, and yeah, I don't really kind of operate outside of the confines of this game, because for me this is the original, this is how it was originally intended, and anything they've done since is an effort to sort of capitalise and sort of make money on it, which is a terrible thing to say really, but and I don't want to get into it, but I think like a lot of people, I've been slightly let down by Square in recent years. So anyway. Okay, so just tying up Ultimecia, ultimately, this theory of Ultimecia being Rinoa, it's not something that we're ever likely to get proper clarity or confirmation on, as, people have literally torn this story apart and torn the Ultimania apart, trying to get a hint at truth either way. And as such, I mean, the way I've taken it is, instead of letting the ambiguity of it drive you kind of insane, I'd just leave it down to how optimistically you'd like this story to tie up. For my part, personally, I like the happy ever after, because to have Squall start off cloistered and traumatised, and then to conclude at some point in the future with Squall having, become traumatised yet again for having a psychopathic wife, whatever happens, I just don't think it makes for a very fair, or, it's not very conducive to a well-resolved story if, it begins terribly for him and then ends, ultimately terrible for him.